Under the same roof, we share the love. Embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good evening, watchers. Thank you for tuning in to the channel. You know, I'm so amazed whenever I log in for the show and I see people here early, like One Love and Stella already in the building. They were here like 20 minutes early. That's so amazing to me. I appreciate that type of support. It gets me hyped up for the show. Yes, indeed. Do we have exciting news? Did you hear what's happening with the FBI shakeup with Dan Bongino in regards to him leaving the office, right? That's something to talk about. And so much more. But tonight we're blessed to have with us Candace Kelly, the law professor, to help us navigate all of these news stories from a legal point of view. I kind of like that. Legal point of view. Candace, welcome in.
Hey, how are you doing? Good to be here as always. Yeah, you have some good supporters. That's nice. They want the information and they want it with clarity. So that's why they're here.
Absolutely. So what do you think in regards to all of the news in regards to Epstein? We can't get away from Epstein.
Yeah, we can't get away from Epstein. We can't get away from the fact that the pictures are coming. The videos are going to continue to come because there's a schedule that is being followed and Congress is releasing them. The Department of Justice is releasing them. And the reason that they're doing this is because there's been such controversy over this. But as every item is released, there's always going to be controversy. Now, recently, those in Donald Trump's camp said, yeah, hey, guess what? Donald Trump hung out with Jeffrey Epstein in their younger years, and that's that. So while we haven't seen anything that specifically says Donald Trump did this with a young girl, there are implications, there are talks, there are emails about, doing something in terms of Donald Trump and making sure that, we get Donald Trump. But all of that, it involves a little bit of innuendo, I will say, and there's nothing that's exact. So I think that that's why his camp said, hey, you know what, since there's nothing that is specific, right? If we were in the court of law in terms of evidence, we wouldn't have enough information, right? We have other things. There's innuendo. We can read between the lines. But right now, if you're looking at this as maybe some legal case, for example, and you're looking at the evidence would actually at this point sway in Donald Trump's favor. Now, there might be somebody else out there who believes otherwise, or maybe you have thoughts about it. But right now, no smoking gun, as they say. The evidence, it does not spell out anything very clear.
Yeah, I like to follow the facts. And when it comes to Donald Trump, one thing I always say, he might be guilty of some things, but for the most part, there is no young females coming forward, at least saying that he did something sinister. So that's where I sit now. But who knows what's coming out? We see a lot of reports. In fact, the senator, I think Robert Garcia, says that they're going to be releasing photos and so forth of individuals with the victims redacted. So let's see what happens. I wanted to get your viewpoint on this whole situation with Dan leaving the FBI. So I want to show you the video, perhaps, and then we can chat about it. Okay, here.
I don't know what people think me and Cash are doing all day. I mean, I gave up everything for this. I mean, my wife is struggling. I'm not a victim. I'm not Jim Comey. It's fine. I did this, and I'm proud I did it. But if you think we're there for tea and crumpets, well, I mean, Cash is there all day. We share it. Our offices are linked. He turns on the faucet. I hear it. He's there he gets in like 6 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't leave till 7 at night. I'm in there at 7:30. in the morning. He uses the gym. I work out in my apartment. But I stare at these four walls all day in D.C., by myself, divorced from my wife. Not divorced, but I mean separated, divorced. And it's hard.
So it seems like he has some personal issues going on. Is that what you gather?
Yeah, definitely there seems to be a sense of maybe job dissatisfaction in there somewhere, maybe something brewing that, behind the scenes, maybe people are trolling him. He's trying to explain to people what he is actually doing that he might think might be effective. And that's what I get from there's a little bit of a sense of frustration there in terms of what he wants people to understand about what he does perhaps in his capacity. And as we know, we got the Epstein files and everything that he said before he got into this position. And that's always been a point of contention. So that thread goes through all of this right now.
Absolutely. I believe that too. I wanted to just show you a little bit more of this video because she kind of calls him out in a very negative way. I want you to hear a little bit of this.
Full day's work is hard. Our colleague Carol Lennig today broke the news that man who, in his own words, said it was, quote, hard, divorced from my wife, from my friends all day, staring at those four walls. That guy, the number 2 official at the FBI for less than a year, is preparing to vacate that position as soon as Friday. Dan Bongino, who, as we just showed you, made no secret of the struggle he faced in doing that job, has, according to Carol Lennig's reporting, quote, quietly told confidants he plans to formally leave his job early in the new year and will not be returning to headquarters to work this month. That's according to 8 people briefed on his account. Several people said some of Bongino's personal effects have been cleared out of his office as of last week. Carol's still here, and I want to bring in former assistant special agent in charge of the FBI, national security and intelligence analyst Michael Feinberg. Carol, he said he was, quote, divorced from his wife, but then he said he meant separated physically, not divorced legally. But tell us what you are reporting about Dan Bongino.
Well, we first started hearing that Bongino was telling his inner team that he was leaving.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think it's normal that he has a date going forward, but he's already cleared the office?
That's not normal. we know that's not normal. That shows someone who said, you know what, I got to get out of here. And that also shows that he was thinking about this, obviously, long before today or yesterday, whenever the news came out that we're hearing this. If those things are cleaned out, that was already done, right? The other thing that we know is that this is kind of very unusual in terms of somebody having this big position. He gave up a big position to begin with in terms of his podcast, his followers, the people that he had who believed in him and his theories and his thoughts and ideas. He gave all of that up for this in order to go after those Epstein files, which is what the president ran on. And I think he lost a lot of faith. I'm sure that there was some loyalty lost, and I'm sure that there was some credibility lost that may not have even had to do with him. Perhaps some might argue because he did try to push for those files to come out, but it did not pan out for him. So it's very unusual that someone would leave this job. Listen, there's normally fanfare. There's normally congratulations. Normally there's a job that you go into. We haven't heard about him saying, listen, someone's sick in my family, or I'm going to get another job, or I need to do more. He's just leaving. And that really shows the level of dissatisfaction probably that he had with this job in terms of trying to make way through his party.
Yeah, it almost makes me wonder if he was assisted in leaving, because sometimes in the corporate setting, as you probably know, when there's a little tension with the company, they kind of clear you out right away.
Yeah, they clear you out right away. Look, conversations have already been had. And what we don't know now, that's a very good point, is where it came from. We know that he's stepping down, but we don't know what stories will come out after this. Was he pushed out? Did he do it on his own volition? Right. So all of those things we just never know. But for today, and we know that these news stories change day to day. For today, we know that this is the story that he's telling. He's stepping down. We know how things go. We know how the administration goes. 3 months later, or 3 days later, 3 weeks later, you might hear something on Truth Social that says, we pushed him out. He had to go. We never wanted him. So we just have to wait and see, Mal.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like maybe this could give us some insight into the Epstein files if he leaves disgruntled in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he does have information. Obviously, there are certain things that he can't say, he can't disclose, but he might be on a different mission to, on his own, gain loyalty back from his followers and those constituents who believed in him. Because on his own, he can take a different path and on his own volition, do his own investigation, do whatever it takes to uncover evidence without revealing what he has said and what is protected while he was in this particular office.
Okay, so let's move on to Donald Trump and Rob Reiner, who lost his life. It's a terrible shame how he left the world, him and his wife. Did you see what Michelle Obama had to say in regards to Donald Trump's reaction to the death of Rob Reiner?
Yeah, yeah. And I also just got finished watching Tonight Being Charlie, which is loosely based on the relationship between Nick and his parents, who he allegedly killed. And so, you just have to take a moment to think about everything that's happened and the empathy and sympathy that we've seen across the board, but that some people don't have. So I saw the response from Michelle Obama, and you have to handle these things with compassion. You have to handle things with care, and that's just not something that we are getting from the president and as well as other Republicans um, who actually came out against Donald Trump, actually, who also believed that this isn't something that you make a political football. I'm not really sure what to make of it without being rude or without, going in a different direction. But we know that this response was ridiculous. And we also know that this was something to get attention. I think that when we look at the context, I'm wondering why someone like Donald Trump didn't, especially with his attacks in terms of the Caribbean and preventing drug trafficking. I really thought he was going to take a moment to big himself up in that way and say, this is the reason why we need to do something about the drug trades and drug cargo. But he took this very nasty route that I'm not surprised about, but it just gives you pause about the cross section of humanity that is out there and how we treat other people. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure what to say about that response. You know why? Because it was such a silly response that it doesn't really necessitate a lot of back and forth. What do you do when something is totally different language than how you would speak as a human being? And that's what his response was to me, which is why it's hard for me to say, okay, let me give some analysis. It was really just like a foreign language.
Absolutely. Let me show you the video for those who may not have seen it.
Husband were friends with Rob and Michelle Reiner, and I'm very sorry for your loss.
My God.
How long have you known the Reiners?
We've known them for many, many years, and we were supposed to be seeing them that night, last night, and we got the news. And
Let's see here.
Unlike some people.
Michelle Reiner, and I'm very sorry for your loss.
My God.
How long have you known the Reiners?
We've known them for many, many years, and we were supposed to be seeing them that night, last night, and we got the news. And let me just say this, unlike some people, Rob and Michelle Reiner are some of the most decent, courageous people you ever want to know. They're not deranged or crazed. What they have always been are passionate people in a time when there's not a lot of courage going on. They were the kind of people who were ready to put their actions behind what they cared about. And they cared about their family, and they cared about this country, and they cared about fairness and equity. And that is the truth. I do know them.
Okay, so did you notice the dig that she gave?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Listen, yeah, that's how you look, unlike some people say, right, about them. I also think too that there's anytime that someone seems as if they are in power, then that becomes an issue for the president. And not only was, Rob Reiner and his wife and the family known for their powerhouse productions, Few Good Men, When Harry Met Sally, Princess Bride, right? all of these things. This is Spinal Tap, but he was also a political powerhouse. If you go in and Google him in 60 Minutes or him on, any show, he's talking about politics. And he was able to, wrangle people. And he believed in the First Amendment. He worked on a committee for the First Amendment in order to defend it, and probably believed that both sides are able to say what they could say by law, but with a little more care than what we're seeing it being handled with right now. But his politics were certainly that Trump did not like, and for some reason, he was low in acts of kindness. What can we really say about this response? Two kids that no longer have their parents, that were murdered in their own home by their brother. What else can you say but to have the most lowest common denominator, junkyard dog response? Not surprised and unacceptable.
What do you think? Just in the last week alone, we've had so many violent acts.
That is a very interesting question. I actually Googled this week. I said, let me remind myself of the statistics. Do we get the most amount of crimes during the holidays? And that's what I went in Googling. And the response was no. While we get a lot of domestic violence, which, by the way, these murders are the height of domestic violence. That's how they explain it. And I've gone through domestic violence training that when we think about domestic violence, the height of it is when someone kills someone. So I would say yes in that regard. But when we look at other shootings that are going on, whether it's abroad, whether it's in, recently in Brooklyn, then we've got Rhode Island, right, at Brown University. They say that actually the summer months are when we talk about homicides in that particular height where these types of things happen. But, we're also in a totally different time. Every time that we move the needle politically, it's always going to be in a set of different circumstances in terms of what's going on with people financially in the Affordable Care Act. What are people mad about? Have they lost their jobs? What is the education system spitting out? Are people able to get jobs in education? It's always a perfect storm of different sorts, depending upon where you are in the history of politics. And when we look back at this particular history, it's not going to be good. We are in the middle of that not good. So who knows what the statistics will be next year or the year after about this particular perfect storm. But most homicides, in terms of according to up to date now, happen during the summer. But it is the height of domestic violence season. And certainly we can understand that too, right? You've got people coming together that haven't come together before for Thanksgiving and the holidays and in between. You've got custody disputes and you have the drop off here and the drop off there for the parents. You have people who want to buy Christmas gifts for their kids, can't afford it, and that rises. So this has always been the season for those types of domestic situations and more.
Stanley says Trump is guilty of arrogance and stupidity.
Yeah, Stanley's got it going on. Let me leave it there. Hello, Stanley. Yeah, yeah. What can we say? I mean, even if something happened to Trump, I mean, the response should be, no matter the political. And I've seen this clip, for example, of Rob Reiner talking about Charlie Kirk and how he should not have been killed that way. Is not open season on people, regardless of your political opinion. That should never be a precedent that we condone, because that makes people just more inclined to do more of that. And so that's not something that we can, go out there, misconstrue, misunderstand, and misinterpret. There's only one interpretation so far that we have seen, and that is that this man was troubled since he was 15 years old, went through 17 different, what's that called? Not clinics, but when to overcome drugs, drug clinics, things of that nature.
Rehabs, yeah.
Thank you, rehab. And it's been like that for decades now. And he never got over and out of that drug issue. And for anybody who has had any types of drugs in their family and understand kind of how it unfolds, that is a monster. I don't care how much money or what type of beach house you have. The things won't cure the thing. The money won't cure the thing. The thing is big. It is huge. After a while, I've got Some friends who their brothers or their sisters are so far gone, you don't even know who you're talking to. They've been on drugs for 50 years. So you don't know who you're talking to, but it's not the young kid that's my friend's brother. It's this thing created by drugs. And when you have that monster, it is difficult to rope that in. There is no one answer. If that was the case, we wouldn't have a crisis across every type of drug, whether it's heroin or cocaine or opioids. It's hard to wrangle in.
Yes, one of our strong watchers, Jeb Common, says Epstein Files has revealed that Epstein donated millions of dollars to Clinton's and Schumer campaigns.
Yeah, I saw some headlines about that. What do we say about that? Again, let's go to the court of law. What would that say, Mel, that someone donated to a campaign? I'm not sure much.
Yeah.
You can imply, all right? There's some innuendo there that you can connect some dots and say, oh, okay, that means they were very good friends. And we have seen some pictures of Clinton with Epstein. But that's where the buck stops. Again, there is no evidence that says anything else. So they supported Epstein. Is that a good look? No, not at all. But does
Okay.
that say anything in terms of, okay, what are some chargeable offenses? That's what I'm looking at, right? Because can we really, if someone pulls up a friend that's doing something crazy now, but was your friend, Mel, back when you were, 22, is that fair? Are we now saying, yeah, but when you were 22, you hung out with this man? I wouldn't say, okay, yeah. And now that this man has been, scheming people and taking their money, that Mel must have too. And so I think that's a stretch when we're talking about, all right, what can you really actually prove?
Okay, so we'd like to ask everyone to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Also, Candace, could you tell everyone what you do?
Yes, listen, follow me at Candace Kelly TV. And I like to talk to people about the law. I also have a show called Not All Hood, weekly drop. We go live every Sunday at 7 p.m. We have some really interesting guests. We like to take comments. And of course, I'm here with Mel. And we do our thing about hot topics. So that is what I do.
Okay, some people in the audience, One Love says that Pam Bondi is the reason behind Dan perhaps leaving office.
It could be, it could be. I there is tension in the White House. You talked about, listen, any other regular job, if your office is cleaned out, there's something else going on. There is tension within that White House, the same way that if you work at a corporation, or work at some big media conglomerate, there's going to be tension. It's the same thing here. And we don't know how people really feel about each other. We know what they say when they put their face forward, but we also know that that's very highly orchestrated. All right. They're not going to go out there and fight each other. But when he leaves, I think in a month is when he's going to leave before the end of the year, we'll hear for sure whether or not Pam Bondi was in it, because then he'll have the liberty to say, and he won't be muzzled in the way that he is now. We're going to hear a lot from him. His numbers are going to go up on his podcast. How about that? They will.
Absolutely. We get a mixture from individuals. They say, well, Donald Trump is doing a great job. Prices are down. Donald Trump says the gas is going to be below $2 a gallon. But then we get people that say they're sucking wind. They're struggling just to make ends meet. Are we living in two different countries? What's happening here?
I think we're living in two different worlds depending upon who you are. There are some people who will never be affected by an economic crisis. If you have $10 million in the bank or $2 million in the bank, you're going to be able to afford eggs. You're going to be able to afford health care. But those distinctions that people are talking about, let's talk about affordable health care, for example, or the the Health Care Act and things of that nature. There are some people whose premiums have gone up to the size of their mortgage. So yeah, there are people who are struggling and they're feeling the effect immediately because of what's going on in the world of insurance. Then you have people, hundreds of thousands, who since the beginning of the year, they've lost their jobs. So those are people who are saying it is very, very difficult. If you look at the index in terms of food, meat is up, eggs are down. Like there are some arguments that can be made about food in particular because the numbers tell the story. But the people that you often hear about the most certainly are the people who are struggling the most. They're the ones who are feeling the ouch. And so their cries of pain are louder. And that's what we're hearing. And it is the truth that people are struggling, but it is also the truth that some people are not affected and that they're doing well. It depends upon where you live. It's kind of like education. How good is your education in a public school? It depends upon where you live. And that really determines a lot. It determines your social circles. It determines where you go to school, depending. And that's similar to how we're dealing with just that economics of today. Depends upon where you live, depends upon the job that you have. So both sides can be true, and they are true.
Okay, very good. So let's move on and talk about Luigi Mangione. Tell everyone what you thought about being in the courtroom.
Well, I think that being in the courtroom was very interesting. I think that his supporters were something to be taken into consideration in terms of how we treat defendants. People love him. There are people on a whole who love him, and he represents this anti-hero that represents the whole healthcare system. And, being in the court, I just got a sense that the people in the audience, not only there were people who supported him because they thought, oh my goodness, I love him, he's so handsome. There were also people who were there who you and I both spoke to, who were there because of his Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial and that he's innocent until proven guilty. So I think seeing up close and personal that particular side of the coin of these young, mostly women, talking on his behalf in a way that was quite articulate and very full throttle was very different than what I had seen on TV. So it was good to hear from them. The other truth is, though, that a lot of them are not trying to get in front of the camera. Some of them are, some of them should be at their jobs, is what they said. Some of them are taking, work off, days off in order to be there. So they don't want to be in front of a camera. And the people who are making it in front of the camera might seem a little more kind of fan base as opposed to a little more, legal and I'm here for the rights of the defendant base. And that was the thing that I walked away with the most, that his supporters were all over, but some legitimate organizations were there supporting him because they want to see him get a fair trial and because they have this idea about what the healthcare industry should be doing.
I've noticed certain days that when they're going to cuff him at the end of the day when he's leaving court, it's almost like it's too tight and it's almost like he snaps a little bit, right? Well, that was picked up and so it's discussed in the media. I want to show this to you and get your take on it. Okay.
Question for Susan Constantine, because that's what she does. She's a jury consultant, trial strategy expert, friend of the show. Susan, what do you make of these pictures today and this whole instant shift to, do you see me better now? I mean, what does this tell you for jury consultants who are going to have to figure out what jurors to pick for him?
Well, first of all, what I can share with you is that he lives in this 90% range, that it only takes just a second to kick him off. Okay, so he's already up there. His tank is already full. So he can go on and off really quick like a light switch. The first time we look at scorn and anger, disgust, he's blading, he's ready to, he's in defense mode right here. And then he switches gears, right? And now he's super amused. He's loving the attention and the amusement. But here's what we know is that in cubing, and Dr. Burgess talks about it, how a person that is a sociopathic, psychopathic type of person can literally switch personalities on a dime. And this is Luigi Mangione. So which one is it? They're both him. No personality is stronger than the other. This is just who he is. He can.
Do you think that's common?
Yeah, I think it's definitely common. Listen, this is someone who this is a privileged person. Anytime you take somebody's rights away, it can be as small as, you didn't seat me as quickly as I needed to be seated in a restaurant. Now, this is a heightened, right? This is way lower than just a restaurant that you're just regarding me for. That's going to make you snap. And I think that that's what we're seeing. I think that we're seeing someone who's always had this privileged base, right? At the end of the day, this is a guy who just came back from Thailand and abroad, backpacking and, talking to people and finding authors that he's admired. Now he's in jail. He's not happy. And anytime that you probably make some type of a move in order to arrest him or touch him to make him go back and leave the limelight, right? Because this is someone who truly believes in what they did. And he believes probably, and this is what they often will say, they really believe in what they did. They think that nothing is wrong with it. So it's kind of like, how dare you lock me up for something that I've done that I know people wanted me to do. And in fact, that is the support that he is getting. So even if he is acting a little bit, that's kind of way that's off his rocker a little bit, that some people might assess, he's got that many people who are supporting him and are saying, you're perfectly fine and saying, we love what you did.
Do you think we have a chance here to have a plea of insanity?
Possibly. I mean, that would be one way to go because that's a defense that would be offered to him. But there'd have to be a process of going through that. Now, people who study serial killers, and not that he's a serial killer, but just to get you in the idea of someone
Right.
who's considered a narcissist, they say that when they believe so much in what they do that if they claim that they were insane, that's going to take away from all of their planning, all of their intention, saying that I don't know what I was doing. Many people who are narcissistic, which let's say people think he's narcissistic, they want people to think and know that they are sane so that that insanity defense doesn't look like a viable option because it takes away all their planning and negates everything about what they represent. Oh, they're just crazy. To the side. Most people in his position do not like the insanity defense. They want to be seen as someone who made a conscious decision that was linear, made sense, and everything was sane about it in terms of what was going on in their head.
I'm starting to see in the media a little bit of change as how people are perceiving this whole thing, and people are starting to see that the police officers perhaps made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and you know that better than I because you've been in court a few more days, way more days than I have, and you just probably seeing the police officers. I'm curious from your perspective, seeing them one by one, do they get stronger as a whole or do they get weaker? Because they're trying to build, and often prosecutors will put on people in kind of in order that they want to build their case. How do you think that's going?
They're doing really bad. They're trying to build on some lies, and
Really?
I'm just telling you the truth. This is why I go to court. So basically, what you had happen is you had the primary two officers, Detwilder and Fry. They came to court first, right? And as they were cross-examined, the next day, the other officers tried to fix a few things, right? And then when the lieutenant came, he tried to really fix it and say why they did not need a warrant. And that's a real problem in this case.
Was there any officer that you thought, well, you know what, that one did very well, and now they have some solid ground there?
No, not yet. I haven't seen one yet.
Well, because
Yeah.
we're in week 2 or 3 of this at this point.
Week 3.
Yeah, so that's very unusual, but this is a very important case, as is every other case, right? But this case in particular, for what it represents and the attention that it's garnered, in terms of going through this pretrial evidence and motions, this is quite a long time. Do you get the sense in court that the audience or that those who are sitting in the galley, are they getting tired and exhausted? Because that will give people a sense of maybe perhaps how a jury will feel down the line, because they're going to probably be hearing some of the same people.
Yes, I believe so. And I think the judge appears to be over it too. So, I will say the lieutenant, I think he did a solid job. But again, he wasn't the one really carrying out each deed that's in question right now, especially when it comes to searching for the bomb, not, reading him his rights in time, and also ordering a warrant. Even when they got back to the precinct, Wasser didn't follow up to get a warrant. So these are serious issues.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if the fact that this was such a big case through this police officer in Altoona, I know that there was some testimony that spoke to perhaps that while this big case and this attention, are we really the ones that are going to nab this man and get national attention? And I'm wondering if that might have thrown things off a little bit because there is a lot of natural pressure on them that might make them do things that are out of order and out of line in terms of police procedure.
Yeah, it definitely makes them look bad too because they had so many officers surrounding him. but they're trying to paint the picture in court that he had the right to get up and leave. And we know
Yeah.
that's not the case.
Yeah. Even from the pictures from what about 10 officers, right? And
Yeah.
if I'm in McDonald's eating and I'm surrounded by 10 officers and I really don't know my rights, I wouldn't feel like I have the chance to leave, which is why the police officers are supposed to read the Miranda rights. So, but I still think that it can be argued both ways. I really do. So we'll just have to see what the judge in his discretion says about all of this particular evidence.
All right. Stanley says, Mel, you and Candace are the dynamic duo. Thank
Oh,
you both for sharing.
oh,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you. So glad that you're joining us.
So, what do you think as far as this suppression hearing? Do you think that this causes a lot of pressure for the officers when they go back to Altoona, Pennsylvania?
Oh yeah, it must. I think that there's more than a lot of ribbing, right? Because honestly, it wasn't, because there is so much debate about it. We know something wasn't done right. Otherwise, there'd be no debate. We are now in the nuances of everything, and that's what's causing the debate. Had they done what they were supposed to do, specifically according to just all the rules and everything, then it would have passed muster. So if I'm going to work, right, it's like if I'm going to put out a fire and I come back and the building is still burning, that's a problem. And I can imagine that they're going back to their precinct and they're getting a lot of ribbing at the very least. Like, what? Why am I hearing about hoagies? You know what I mean? Wasn't that a part of it? There was some sandwich. They said, hey, if you catch the guy, I'll get you a hoagie or something like that. Not a good look. So I'm sure that it would cause a lot of issues. And what it will also do is open up the door for retraining, right? And we hear this a lot of cases where you have police officers, they go up and they start quoting antiquated ways of policing. And yeah, maybe back in 2000, maybe 2006, they were trained one way and that's what they remember. But in terms of up-to-date procedure, that's what's going to happen in Altoona, is that they're going to change procedure. They're going to change the rules. They're going to make sure people get that handbook so that this doesn't happen again. Because even though we haven't gotten to a decision yet, this is embarrassing. Like I said, you can't come home if you're a fire person and that fire is still burning. You didn't do your job. And so this really puts them on trial, if you will, at least on the stand, showing all the T's that they didn't cross. They are going to make some changes in Altoona.
So let me ask you this question. It seems like a smoking gun type of case, literally, right?
Yeah,
So in this type of case, when you have the gun, you have what they're calling a manifesto, but it's just a journal, right?
right.
You have his future plans. He's trying to buy a survival kit. All of these things coming out in court. How does the judge navigate this to where you have all this incriminating evidence, but the officer screwed up the case?
You know what? Right to the law. That's exactly what happens in cases. In any procedure, you have to go to what they call precedent cases, and they compare and contrast what happened in previous cases. And they try to say, based upon what happened in our decision making throughout the years, this is how I am supposed to decide based upon it was already written. So they take all of the facts. And I think that there's a lot of discretion involved in there too, right? Because you have to determine, well, I mean, for example, calling his notebook a manifesto, that is particularly unfair to Luigi because it hasn't been proven that it's a manifesto. We know that it's a book where he wrote things. And so the judge used the discretion and said, okay, you will not be able to call it a manifesto. That was decided. So that's the discretion that's involved. And that's a lot of discretion in precedent cases. And they will sit there and they will say what the cases are, X versus X circa 1992. This was decided. It's still, the law. And so that's why we're going to decide in this way. And so sometimes you sit in court and you get down to the details and down to the numbers of the law and the parts of the precedent cases. And it can be very boring and long, but you hear his justification and the attorneys hear it too. And they come back and they say, yeah, but according to this case, back and forth. So that's how a judge does it. It's a lot of exchange, if you will, to try to figure out, all right, well, what case is this particular case closely like? And let's decide accordingly.
Yeah. You know, after being in court each day, I kind of find that I think the judge will come to his own conclusion, but I think the general public is probably looking at it like, oh, this guy is going to be charged. It's cut right to the point. They have his gun. And then when they hear in the media that the judge suppressed the gun, the journal, and all of these items, then I think people will get upset.
Oh no, I think they definitely will. And then they'll go back to what you and I have been following, and they'll see the discernment. And then what will happen is this will be a precedent case added on to the other precedent case. No matter what happens, this now becomes a precedent case for future cases. So you're right. If that happens, that's going to be a very big deal. I think what also makes it a big deal is that, and this is just the system, you have all of our potential veneer men or jury members who are exposed to all of this information. And it's very, very hard to kind of decipher and leave that behind when you go into the deliberation room. So, and hearing those jurors, maybe for example, the Sean Combs reckoning, I know that there were different assessments that you and I made based upon who was in the jury or when the heads were shaking, because we saw that woman with the ponytail shake her head a lot. She was often a talk of discussion if anybody saw the Sean Combs, The Reckoning. So I'm just wondering what happens to the jury pool and how this really kind of dilutes it in a way in terms of what they're thinking. It kind of changes the way that they're thinking because there's so much information. We are in the information age. And so lawyers are going to have to do a really good job on the voir dire process and selecting members of the jury that they know can be fair and impartial. Very, very tough.
Yeah, you sound so amazing. That's why a lot of people in the audience are so crazy about hearing you speak. So I just want you to know that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
That's the number one thing people keep saying. Oh my goodness, Candace sounds so eloquent. You know what I mean? So
hey,
we got to give you your flowers while you're here, right?
Thank you. And let me give you your flowers. Let me tell you, Mel is the king of detail. He's going to say this person came on and they got off the stand at about 11:10 and this is what happened. Now I have to count on him in terms of the memory for that, but sharp as a tack, and that is not easy to do. I'm surprised you're not an attorney yourself. I really am.
Yeah, I missed my calling, so it is what it is. So
it's not too late. Mel, get on out there.
I'll stick with the stock market.
Okay.
Well, listen, we reached our time, and we will be coming back at 9 o'clock. The President of the United States is going to give a special announcement, a breaking news announcement. So I'm going to cover it. So guys, you can come back at 9 o'clock. Candace, could you give us some closing remarks?
Yeah, this is a time where we have, again, a lot of heightened events going on, and we're such big news consumers. I love the news. I'm in the news and I've been doing it for a while. But my closing remarks are this, during the holiday seasons coming up, it's next week. Can you believe it? In terms of those who celebrate Christmas, it's also nice to take a little break from the news. And I know that's what you and I do, but it kind of keeps the mind and psyche right. So I wish everyone well tonight.
Thank you so much. Nice having you. We look forward to having you back next week, same time.
All right. See you then.
So long.
Different voices, but the same song. Building a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the thing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United United we stand in love's pure might.